Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we have a donation deck to play a nice little mono black deck. But this isn't your sort of Helm combo mono black deck or your Karn mono black deck. We're on sort of good old fashioned black creatures. And the creatures we're playing kind of represent various prison-like elements. So first off we have Orcish Bowmasters. Now this is a massive staple of the format now. This can really restrict decks that want to withdraw multiple cards through things like either Echo of Eons or just your bog standard Brainstorm Ponder setups. This can really punish those decks in a big way. So we've got those. We've also got Dauthi Voidwalker. Again, it's been a thing that's been a staple in the format for a while now. Graveyard hate on an evasive body that sometimes gets you to just cast Emrakuls, you Thoughtseize out your opponent's hand or whatever. A really good card, so we're shutting off graveyards with this and card draw with this. And we have Opposition Agent, which can shut off people's ability to search libraries, whether that's Crop Rotation or Urza Saga or whatever, or Infernal Tutor. There's loads of things that Opposition Agent can restrict for your opponents. So we kind of got these sort of trifecta of creatures that really restrict what our opponent can do in a game. Now to round that out, we've also got 3 Sheoldred, which is kind of like another version of the Bowmasters effect in a lot of ways. And this card just solos games out very easily on its own. And we can ramp it into play quite easily because we are running 3 Chrome Mox and 4 Dark Ritual. So we can play it as early as turn 1 sometimes, and that can just be absolutely backbreaking for our opponent. The other creature in our deck is Grief. Once again, an absolute staple of the format. Some hand disruption that later on is a creature, and we are running 3 Reanimate so that we can bring it back and get some nice hand disruption twice on turn 1 and leave ourselves a nice body. Alternatively, we can reanimate our opponent's scary things if we find something we want there. So I really like this sort of Grief scam setup here. We're not going fully into it. We've only got 3 Reanimates because we don't have that many ways of putting creatures into our graveyard. So this is just a thing that in the sort of mid to late game we can get back one of our threats, or sometimes we'll be getting our Grief back early, or maybe it'll just pitch to a Chrome Mox that's a black card. But that's, you know, things that we can do. We also have 3 Thoughtseize and 2 Hymns to Tourach to try and shred our opponent's hand. So we're just trying to punish our opponent on lots of different lines here. And against each matchup, different combinations of these will be better. So when we go to sideboarding, we can sort of fine-tune that a little bit and know what we're looking for in mulligans. And then we have a bit of removal to round out in Sheoldred's Edict. This is kind of one of the standout removal spells right now because it's good against the decks that don't have creatures because you can smash their planeswalkers. It kills Marit Lage. It also can kill Orcish Bowmasters when they've got the token around because you get to choose non-token. So it's just really flexible and potent. So I'm a big fan of having this in the deck. And that's it for the spells. Now, you may have seen our mana base is quite different to what you'd normally expect from a mono black deck, since mono black decks tend to be City of Traitors, Ancient Tomb, that sort of jam. We are not doing that. We are fully into all the swamps you can imagine here because look at our mana costs. So all of our 1-drops obviously are black, but we've got black in Dauthi Voidwalker. We've got black in Hymns to Tourach. We've got double black pips on our Sheoldred, double black pips on our Grief. Realistically, the only things we're going to get out of having an Ancient Tomb in our deck is having Opposition Agent and Sheoldred come in slightly earlier sometimes. But the downside for that would be not being able to cast our spells in the early game. And games can be decided so early in Legacy that we don't really want to have these awkward Ancient Tombs. And instead of having Urza Saga, which would incentivize you to have more Ancient Tombs, or a Karn or anything, we've got this Wasteland package, so we can disrupt our opponent on yet another axis. So Opposition Agent plus Wasteland can be really annoying because you can shut off their fetchers and shut off the land they do have and get there. So in the spirit of not having draws that are unplayable, we've only got 1 Urborg here because we don't really need it, but sometimes it will come in handy to turn our Wastelands into black producing lands. And having 1 means we're not going to trip over multiple copies of it. We also have 1 Castle Locthwain. We could have played some other things here. Maybe Hive of the Eye Tyrant should be in here. Actually, let's go ahead and add that Hive of the Eye Tyrant right now. I think that's going to be useful here. So let's add this in here and strip out one of these swamps. Alright, so we've got another utility land in Hive of the Eye Tyrant, just a creature. It comes in untapped if it's in your opening hand, basically. So not too shabby. And we have Castle Locthwain that I was mentioning earlier as a way of drawing some cards. So we've got a little bit of utility in our lands, but mostly we just want to cast our spells reliably, which is something that some mono black decks struggle with, especially when they're playing things like Tourach in the sideboard, and they just can't necessarily get multiple black mana to cast it. So we're hopefully not going to have that problem. We're going to be a bit more Wasteland proof as well. We've got a whole bunch of swamps here. So I'm quite excited to see how this one pans out. It kind of feels like good old fashioned mono black aggro like I used to play 20 years ago, maybe, something like that. I was sort of kitchen tabling it. All right, let's have a little chat about the sideboard. So we've got 4 Lane on the Void to really shut the door on graveyard decks alongside our Dauthi Voidwalker. Those matchups should be very easy for us to win. Tourach, if we're playing against white decks, we might want to have some sort of way of killing our opponent that doesn't die to Swords to Plowshares, something like that. And also disrupting our hand is quite good. So this can be good against control as well as some of these white aggressive decks. Obviously, it can't block a Seasoned Engineer because it has pro creatures when it attacks, but it can block other stuff from that deck. Then we have 4 Plague Engineers. Again, we're trying to go down the angle of suppressing our opponent's ability to play the game, right? So we've got all our creatures that kind of like prison elements. Plague Engineer is just another one that does a similar thing. Probably going to be on Orcs quite a lot to kill our opponent's Bowmasters, but this is going to be quite useful in a various selection of matchups. Then we have 2 Null Rod. Null Rod is a thing that is very good right now because there's the 1 ring deck that just spams a load of artifacts, taps them for loads of stuff multiple times a turn. They can't really win through Null Rod, and most of them don't even have answers to Null Rod. They just have answers to Collector Roof, so Null Rod is pretty strong there. It does tread on our toes a little bit with the Chrome Mox, but if we're playing a Null Rod in a matchup where we want it, it's going to be so much better against them than it is against us shutting down maybe 3 of our cards. We have Torpor Orb. This is mainly for Doomsday, but it's also going to be useful against Death and Taxes sometimes. But there is a little bit of, again, treading on our own toes because of Bowmasters here. But against Doomsday, that's not a problem necessarily. Like, we lose 1 ping with that, but we still get all the draw pings. And lastly, we have Cursed Totem. This is a card that I have been interested in for a while. I've played it on and off over the last 10 years or so when I've been playing Legacy. I think it's got some real good uses. Like, it shuts down these sort of Newton Elf style deck that have all these creatures with all these activated abilities. You can just put this down and say no to all of them, and that's really handy, as well as the Knight of the Reliquary green-white X decks that are seeing a lot of play these days, like Knight of the Reliquary and Elvish Reclaimer. You can kind of shut them both down with 1 card, which is really potent. So I've opted for this and Null Rod rather than going for Pithing Needles. So we've got stronger hate, but it is kind of specific in a different fashion. We can't tailor it to everything, but we should be able to hit the big things with it, right? That's the plan. So that's our deck. I'm quite excited to play this one. I do like Mono Black quite a bit. I play various Mono Black decks on my channel, and this one just feels like a good old-fashioned classic way of playing Magic. So let's get into it. Remember to like and subscribe, and why not check out my Patreon link below, or join the Discord and say hello. And if you would like a donation deck like this one, why not get in touch with me either through the Discord, or you can just reply to this video and I'll get back to you with an email address or whatever, and we can sort that out. Alright, let's play some Legacy. Right, we're on the play for game 1. We have a turn 2 Opposition Agent into a turn 3 Sheoldred, but that would require another black card. The double Wasteland is interesting to me as well, but these delay our other plays. I think we can do better than this. Wouldn't mind some hand disruption or something. We can hint to Tourach and try and snipe something with a Reanimate. I don't hate that. We don't really have our own game plan here. We're kind of relying on the Reanimate a little bit here. So we can put back one of these swamps. So we can jam this down. I just really like him to Tourach. The urge to cast it here is too strong. So we'll put a Reanimate underneath this. We will him to Tourach our opponent, hopefully finding a really nice creature that we can Reanimate next turn. We did not. Okay, so we do have a dead card in hand now, which is definitely one of the risks with playing this. If our opponent's a Delver deck, they might mill over a creature that we want. This does give me the impression that we're playing against Delver. And we do have a decent chunk of creatures in our deck. So we're not going to pitch Caster's Grief. We're going to wait to hard cast it, and then we can Reanimate it if they kill it. If they're a Delver deck, the chances are... They could be Jeskai, but with Lightning Bolts, I'm expecting Grixis. Right, there's a Wasteland that we've blanked because of our mana base, which is one of the things I said at the top. So that's nice, at least. If we can find a land next turn, we can cast the Grief, and then we can get it back with the Reanimate if they Lightning Bolt it or whatever, or if it gets counterspelled. Night's Whisper. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Okay. I've not seen this art before. No Lord of the Rings art for it. Okay. Over to us. A Dark Ritual. Let's cast a Dark Ritual, because that lets us Grief right now. Don't want to counterspell this. Then, you're right, we've just duressed them for a counterspell. It's pretty good. This lets us cast a Grief. If they counter it, we then get to Reanimate it. Here comes the Grief. Is this worthy of a Force of Will? No. Okay. Let's see what our opponent's working with over there. Dragon's Rage Channeler, Lightning Bolt, Daze, Brainstorm, etc, etc. I think we take the threat. I'm not going to reanimate the Dragon's Rage Channeler here. I'm going to let them Lightning Bolt our Grief, and then we're going to reanimate our Grief and take another card. So there's the Volcanic we knew about. What have we got here? Sheoldred's Edict. That'll be useful later on. Just bash for 3. They're going to Lightning Bolt this, or they're going to take the damage. Oh, they just took the damage. Interesting. Okay. They know we have Reanimates in our deck, I guess, because we put one under our Chrome Mox. Yep, so Lightning Bolting end of turn. So taking 3 damage this turn to preserve their hand a little bit. And we've got a Brainstorm. We've got an answer for the first creature, but we know what we have to play around in terms of these 2 spells. Now, they may be going into their library via the Brainstorm and getting shuffled away soon, but we'll have to see how it pans out. Right, so over to our opponent. A Delver of Secrets. Not a very exciting threat. I'm going to play land. Am I interested in trying to kill this Delver of Secrets? This is always going to kill their weakest creature, so I think we just go sacrifice a non-token creature. That's the one. If they've got the Spell Pierce, they can snap it off here. Yep, there it is. Sure. I don't hate trading for that. It means our Reanimate is way more likely to resolve because we don't have to worry about the double counter spells. Our Grief. I like tapping the Chrome Mox first time when possible because this is the easier thing to disrupt compared to our other mana sources. Let's see what they're working with now. So they've got a Daze in hand perhaps and a Brainstorm. Okay, we'll take the Brainstorm and leave them with just a Daze. And we are slightly ahead in the race, but if this flips, it can certainly get changed. So Delver of Secrets. It flips, revealing a Ponder. Pretty good. I'm casting their Ponder. Right, they did not shuffle off the Ponder, which is a bit awkward. Right, so our draw step. What have we got? A Dauthi Voidwalker. I like that one. It's another threat. We can pay around a single Daze. This gives us a 2-turn clock against our opponent, which is really handy. They both also attack through Murktide quite nicely. Boys, sure. It doesn't make... This does make the Delver 1 turn shorter as a clock, but we have the much superior clock right now. So what are we looking for here? So we know our opponent's whole hand here. We know it's a Daze. If we can find a Bowmasters of our own, because I imagine they're probably going to attack with the Insectile Aberration. So if we can hit the Bowmasters, we won't get done on blocks, because they have to use 2 creatures to block our Grief. Yeah, so just the Insectile Aberration as we expected. Let's see what we find here. A Swamp. Okay, so we have Sheoldred mana available. So if we attack with this, we put our opponent to a slightly lower life total than us, but... Oh well, we put them to 8 here. I don't think we attack with the Grief, we hold back. Because if we find any removal, we can change the clock. So we're going to go to 6, then they're going to go to 5, and then we're going to go to 3, and they're going to go to 2. So at some point we're going to have to attack with this Grief and try and find something. My opponent's cracking that fetch. Is that because they knew the bottom card off the Ponder? Right? No, they couldn't have, because it was the Boys, right? Okay, a Mishra's Bauble. So they could have used this alongside their fetch land to scry for themselves. So we've still got perfect information of what our opponent's doing. So Lightning Bolt can kill us next turn. So we're going to have to draw something here. Sheoldred's Edict, that's a pretty good one. So you can sacrifice a non-token creature, please. You sacrifice the Boys. So I can turn this guy into a Bowmasters if I want to and ping this away. Or we can just try and dodge the Lightning Bolt and attack for lethal this turn. I think that's the correct play here. They've got through 2 Lightning Bolts in their deck. So they have to find a Lightning Bolt here or we win. They can put us to 2. But I think it's just Lightning Bolt. Night's Whisper doesn't target. It's not like Sign and Blood. Mishra's Bauble. Okay. So they can try and kill us in our upkeep if they want to. Alright, let's scoop it up. So once we untap with the Dauthi Voidwalker, we get to deploy the Bowmasters whenever we want. So we can ping them for 1 in response as well, even they do find a Lightning Bolt off the Bauble trigger. Alright, game 1 to us versus Delver. Plague Engineer is something I like here. I don't really want any of the other things. I don't particularly like Opposition Agent in this matchup, so I think it's just a straight swap out here. And I think that'll probably do. Now, Opposition Agent can like slow fetches and stuff down, but a 3-2 isn't that exciting to me. Whereas the Plague Engineer can just get value immediately. How good is Orcish Bowmasters going to be in this matchup? Probably quite good, but it's just going to force... We're kind of going to be all in it, but I think on the draw, this is too many lands. but I think we have a shot on the draw. If we just draw a non-land that also isn't a Chrome Mox, I think we'll be okay here. Also, because our deck has... Oh no, this is a disaster. Because our deck has a lot of black cards, because we're not really playing colourless cards apart from the Chrome Mox, it means that Grief is more reliable in our deck than it is in some of the traditional sort of mono-black Karn decks. Oh, we lost our Grief. That's interesting. Reanimate would be an interesting draw here. A Dauthi Voidwalker. I'm not going to play that out. It cost us our Bowmasters and our Chrome Mox just to walk into a daze. But I would like to get this Dauthi Voidwalker into play. There's the Bauble. No Rad mana from our opponent right now, which means they won't be able to Lightning Bolt any of our creatures. They know we have this Bowmasters. There's the Delver of Secrets. So they're kind of baiting us into trying to hit this hit this Delver of Secrets. I quite like to draw like a black card I'm not interested in casting. If that makes sense. A Plague Engineer. Am I interested in casting that? This is our opportunity to try and kill the Delver of Secrets. Our opponent has 1 blue mana up. If they have a daze and we just play either our Dauthi Voidwalker or our Bowmasters, we don't really get anywhere. If we play out our Chrome Mox here, it probably has to imprint the Plague Engineer just to play around daze. I don't like this very much, but I think we're going to go for it. They've got Spell Pierce and daze, and sure. This won't work against Force of Will, but I think it's worth doing this around daze. They can have double daze though, that'd be annoying. A Brainstorm in response, okay. They knew we had this Bowmasters though, so I'm intrigued. Okay, it's good enough for a Force of Will pitching a daze. And they probably set up their Delver of Secrets with that Brainstorm as well. It's a bit annoying that we had to use a Plague Engineer, but the chances of it being able to kill Delver at this point are very low anyway. And the chance of having Bowmasters in as a more reliable play is just too strong. Now, Plague Engineer can kill Bowmasters down the line that our opponent has, but that's not the situation we're in right now. Take a whack from 3. There we go. So we're down to 17. Alright, we'll play a Swamp. We'll play the thing we have that's going to go straight into our opponent's Lightning Bolt, sadly. But we need to try and grind through our opponent's remaining resources here. Right, so they're shuffling away 1 card from the Brainstorm. And the Lightning Bolt on our guy. I think they do want to Lightning Bolt. Yeah, there we go. I would have Lightning Bolted that. If we can just keep drawing spells, we'll be alright. Alright, Bowmasters. So now we're kind of punished for playing out the Plague Engineer. Although our opponent did have the daze if we just tried to play the thing, because they pitched that to the Force of Will. So it's not the end of the world. But our opponent is very far ahead in this game. We don't have anything going on. But we have Plague Engineers to draw, which will be useful. Sheoldred is going to be better than a lot of their things. Wasteland can take them off of a colour. That's what I'm interested in. But I'd rather take them off of black or red. The problem with this is I don't know which colour I'd rather take them off of, because I don't know what we're going to be drawing. I think I want to take them off of red. It makes more of our creatures be able to stick in play, but it also stops them from playing a Dragon's Rage Channeler, which is one of the best cards in their decks. It just lets them filter in a big way. We got another Lightning Bolt here? No. Night's Whisper. And a Bauble. You can see the top card of our library. Our opponent should have this game in short order, I think. The top card of our library has to be something good, otherwise I think we're buried. And even if it's good, it might not even resolve. Our hand was a little weak and needed us to rip some non-lands. Yep, that'll do. Right, let's go to game 3. Let's keep the same configuration. I would say, I think that's probably where we want to be. I don't think we want any of these other bits and pieces. I'm just going to run it back. Be curious to know if they boarded in any sort of anti-Karn Helm Obedience tech, because that's so common in the mono black decks. This hand just requires us to draw land. So screw beats flood as a general rule, so this is a happier hand for us. We don't have a 1-drop, which is annoying, but we have so many useful plays that can impact the board. Like both masters should be a 2-for-1 that does other stuff. The Plague Engineers can be 2-for-1s as a channeler. So our opponent have a daze here. Can we afford to play around this daze? Yes, because you drew Reanimate. We could just fire off this Edict instead. I think I'll do that in my opponent's turn. This does give an opportunity to cast something, but we kind of want them to cast things a little bit so that we've got more chance of... Alright, I just died. Excellent. So I wanted to have more chance of resolving our spells on our turn, because we want to try and get this Bowmasters down. A Ponder, sure. So if we can draw a land, we can play Bowmasters around days. But we're incentivized to play in our opponent's turn so that we can try and nab one of their creatures, because they play a lot of 1/1s. Between Channeler, Delver and Bowmasters of their very own. No follow-up play from our opponent. And we found the land. Right. We will deploy the Bowmasters around a daze in our opponent's turn. A bit far off of casting anything like a Murktide. Let's try this guy out. They can't Spell Pierce it. They can't daze it unless they have 2 dazes. They have to Force of Will it. They might have their Bowmasters of their very own to kill it, but then we get to reanimate ours. A Dark Ritual. That's quite a nice one. We're going to go to attacks first, though. Let's see if they've got Bowmasters. Alright, feels like they do, which could work out very well for us here. Bow boys, yep. Right, we're going to cast this Dark Ritual. And we're going to reanimate, targeting our Bowmasters. We'll ping out their Bowmasters. Then we're going to deploy a Plague Engineer around daze, or we're going to play a Sheoldred, potentially into daze. We've been playing around daze quite well. They didn't daze a Sheoldred's Edict. I'm going to go for Sheoldred. It should put the game away pretty quickly, the counter. And if not, we still have these 2 Plague Engineers sitting around. Right, so we're getting a 2-for-1 out of it, sure. Pitching Brazen Borrower. Alright, so we've shut off our opponent's cantrips. Well, they're not shut off, but they come at a cost. Murktide Regent is the thing that gets us here. That's pretty good too. Yep. Okay, so now it's back over to us. Sheoldred's Edict. I think we'll just hold this up and kill their Plague Engineer. The idea is we're trying to get our own Plague Engineer to kill something of theirs, so we at least get some value off of it instead of just having a 3-mana 2/2. A Thoughtseize. Sure. Well, Sheoldred's Edict in response, they can take one of our Plague Engineers. Oh, a Spell Pierce. That's pretty good. We cannot pay. So we lose a Plague Engineer. We should have Delirium here, right? Land, instant sorcery creature, yeah. We have to decide what this is going to be on. If we name Human, it will stop Delvers, which they haven't drawn any of yet. If we name Orc, it will stop Bowmasters. So I think we're probably on Orc. Right, this is a tight run game here. Our opponent's got more cards in hand, which is never a great place for us to be. But we do have some really powerful top decks. Like if we can just play a Sheoldred at some point, they pretty much have to answer it on the stack, because Lightning Bolts aren't going to cut it, and Sheoldred's Edict, we're going to be sacrificing our Plague Engineer instead, which means we're incentivized to just take the damage and trade a little bit here, even though our opponent's got reach through burn spells. Right, there's a burn spell to our little guy. Sure, so we take 2 here, we go to 14, over to us, and we've got a blank draw. So our opponent is playing a lot of the same sort of things that we are, with the Bowmasters and the Engineers, Thoughtseizes, Sheoldred's Edicts and stuff like that. But they have blue spells to string it all together. I'm going to draw another land, a Grief. Do we use our Dark Ritual to play around daze? I think so. Right, let's see what they're working with over there. A Bowboys. What was their last card? A Wasteland. Okay, that's not going to do anything to us here. Okay, so Grief versus their board, which is much better. We're going to need some help to win this one. We've also checked that the coast is clear for counter spells. Now they might have a hard cast Force of Will they can deploy this turn. Should be unfortunate. Right, they're not attacking. That's interesting. A Wasteland. Right, let's cut our opponent off with black mana. We're not attacking if they're not attacking, I guess, because we can keep a decent chunk of their things at bay here. Plague Engineer is a very good draw for us. Sheoldred is probably very good too. Just coming in with a Plague Engineer. We can take 2. We got some life to work with. Sheoldred's Edict, you say? Interesting. Right, sacrifice a non-token creature. They can't play a Bowmasters now themselves because they don't have the mana for it. So we win in 5 attacks. They win in 3 attacks. Guess we have to hold this back to stop the Orcish army. If we can just find one Sheoldred, then this game should turn around pretty quick. I think we block here. Dragon's Rage Channeler. It's a good card. Dauthi Voidwalker, that's a fine card. Not good enough on this board, but it gives us some pressure if we can find some answers or something. Can't block, which is awkward, and there's nothing for it to cast from the void yet. Right, so they're back up to having black mana and hard cast Force of Will available. We can't block because our creature has Shadow, so we take 4 here. A Lightning Bolt or a Bowmasters away from dying. Hive of the Eye Tyrant. That does stuff. Let's attack with this because we don't really have any other options. We can hold it back to try and get a Lightning Bolt that our opponent might cast, but I don't think that's worth it here, because they're only going to cast Lightning Bolt when it will kill us. Alright. This will put us to 1. Orcish Bowmasters kills us. What do we need here? Not a swamp. Alright. We ran it close, but this was basically the difference between cantrips and not having cantrips in a deck, right? Which is kind of part of the problem here. We don't also have the most amount of card advantage in our deck either. But it was close. I think we probably lost this one in the second match where we kept a bit of a ropey hand, trying to hope that we'd draw some business. But let's go to round 2. We are 0-1. We're on the play for round 2. We have Thoughtseize into Dauthi Voidwalker. I think this seems alright to me. Let's keep it. We could also do all that on turn 1, which is extra tasty, I think. So we play the Dauthi Voidwalker before the Thoughtseize because we get to put the thing into the void. So if we have something really scary that our opponent's got, we get to Thoughtseize it away from our opponent and then play ourselves. So like an Emrakul, for example, we might be able to cast as early as next turn. Brazen Borrower, Death Shadow, Murktide Regent. I'm surprised I didn't... This is an interesting keep from our opponent, to be honest. Kind of relying on this Thoughtseize too. We don't care about Thoughtseize because it won't do anything. The Island is kind of annoying for us. We're going to be whittling down our opponent's life total, so we don't really want them to have a Death Shadow. Don't really want to have a Murktide Regent either. That's going to be harder to cast if we have the Dauthi Voidwalker. The Brazen Borrower... It's either the Brazen Borrower or the Shadow, I think, here. I think we take the Borrower. Because they're going to go and get a black source with their Polluted Delta this turn. And they're going to Thoughtseize us. And then we're going to Wasteland them off of black. And beat for 3. Yeah, exactly as we drew it up. So we kind of want to stop our opponent having black sources to cast as Death Shadow. Spin this off now. Go attacks. They shouldn't have any basic swamps in their deck. Usually Death Shadow runs up to 1 island, but sometimes doesn't even have that. Nice island though. Alright, over to us. Thoughtseize of our very own. Right, let's have another little peek. Alright, they're just scooping up to that. Nice. So, we've seen the things you would expect. I don't really like opposition agents. I have to imagine that they're on some sort of Orcish Bowmasters plan. So I think we're just swapping the Plague Engineers for the opposition agents again. Plague Engineer also trades with Death Shadow because of Death Touch. How good... Orcish Bowmasters is more going to be about stopping their stuff rather than killing little guys, but they might be on a build that has some 1/1s. I suspect they're probably on the build with the Trolls. I think that is by far the strongest Death Shadow build, the new Swamp Cycling Troll. I don't think that encourages us to play Leyline in the Void. I think we just roll it back like this. This hand is very slow. It's quite resilient to stuff. I think we will keep this. Like a single Chrome Mox or Dark Ritual changes the dynamic quite a lot. So there's that basic island again and a Ponder. Sure. So these decks tend not to play a threat immediately. The only time they would do that is if they're reanimating something, which is now usually a turn 2 play because they need 2 mana, 1 to cycle the troll, 1 to reanimate it. Okay, we'll play out this swamp. So you have options moving forward, whether or not we want a Wasteland, whether we want a Sheoldred's Edict, a Wasteland from our opponent. Okay, so we're probably not Sheoldred's Edict, we're probably not Wastelanding their Wasteland here. We'll just deploy our own swamp and pass. I do like having a deck just full of basic lands. Here's the troll that we were talking about. So swamp cycle this. Let's just make it bigger for you. So it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. It has swamp cycling and it's a 6 mana 6/5. Just a big boy. They do have a basic swamp. That's interesting to know. The Thoughtseize. I like the Thoughtseize here. It's going to be a Bowmasters perhaps. A Brainstorm. Into open Orcish Bowmasters mana. That is a very brave Brainstorm, that one. Means they probably have something like a Daze in hand, would be my guess. Because I don't think you would cast that Brainstorm if you had no way of answering a Bowmasters off of the 2 mana there. They might think we're not playing it, but I think whenever you see black mana now in Legacy, you should assume Bowmasters. Unless, you know, they're a very specific dedicated combo deck. A lot of Force of Wills over there. A lot of Force of Wills. We can grind through these Force of Wills relatively easily. The Death Shadow isn't going to be making any appearance in the near future anyway. I think we take the 1-for-1 answer of Thoughtseize here. If they want to pitch 2 cards with a Force of Will to stop us doing something, I don't actually mind that too much. They might have put something scarier back on top, but we'll see. Alright, there's no play again. Shoulder the Apocalypse. And we have a Wasteland of our very own. We know this Force of Will is going to hit whatever we cast here. So I'm just going to cast this Grief. Does it get 2 cards? Does it get 1 card? Force of Will pitching Brazen Borrower. Alright. I have 1 mystery card in hand. There's the Brainstorm. It's a good one. They're not doing a great job of lowering their life total yet, which I'm quite thankful for. A Reanimate on the Grief, sure. They're having a look at our hand with the Grief. They decided to take one of our 2 Sheoldreds. They didn't Wasteland us, which means they've got a blue card for Force of Will. I think we will go Sheoldred's Edict first, and then play this out, naming Orc. No Bowmasters for you, opponent. So you've got a decent selection of resources available still. We've got the Sheoldred and the Sheoldred's Edict. Oh, this is a cool card. This is Soren's Ransom, so it's like Factual Fiction, but a bit different. Don't like this pile very much. I'd rather give them a fetch land. So the bottom pile is a face down pile. So they're going to ponder Force of Will or ponder Polluted Delta, but they don't know what the Force of Will ponder is yet. And we have to split up the ponders. Can't just give them 2 ponders. They took the Polluted Delta ponder. Right, there's a Watery Grave. That's 12, so now they can play the Shadow. Oh no, they're playing the ponder. Sure. So that potentially takes a blue card out of their hand, which means our things might be able to resolve next turn. They're cracking. So they wanted just 1 card off the ponder here. A Thoughtseize. Okay, so they're taking probably our Sheoldred here. Okay, we'll play this out. I think we'll Wasteland our opponent's Watery Grave rather than their Underground Sea, because this is one they can bounce with Daze that gives them access to making their guy larger. So we'll attack here. A Death Shadow, sure. So our opponent's got 2 cards in hand over there. Have they got a blue card to go with their Force of Will? We're just taking it all back to square one. But they have a Force of Will that they can't cast in hand. And we get the first draw step. Oh, incredible. The 3rd Sheoldred from the deck. Right, our opponent is very likely to die to this. The Brazen Borrower is already gone. They need a fetch land for Fatal Push. They do have a Wasteland though, so the Wasteland can get it done. But they have this draw step they have now has to have been good enough to beat Sheoldred. Alright, just have a nice little chat with our opponent. Seems like a lovely person. Let's that's the thing about Legacy. Most of the people that play it tend to be nice. And I'm a big fan of the format. And I think the community does help. Anyway, moving on. We're 1-1. Let's go to round 3. Alright, our opening hand for round 3 is so very close to being good. If we had a swamp, I would be absolutely chuffed with this. Is Castle Locthwain on turn 1 too slow? It might well be. Also exposes us to Wasteland. But single swamp and his hand is brilliant. Or a Chrome Mox. Even a Hive of the Eye Tyrant is pretty good too here. Or an Urborg. How am I keeping this? The upside is so high. We've got so many good tools here. I think we do keep. I wouldn't keep this on the play, but I think on the draw, we have more chance of drawing a swamp. Like we can just play the Castle Locthwain turn 1 and just slow the game down for our side for 1 turn, which is not great. Oh, City of Brass, okay. Lion's Eye Diamond. We're going to get dredged, so it doesn't really matter what we did there, I don't think. So I'm going to cast Breakthrough in response, crack Lion's Eye Diamond. Oh, okay. Wowzers trousers. They're going to dredge like their whole deck here. They're going to have 6 dredge triggers this turn. It's like the dream dredge hand. Although they ran out of dredges. Okay, so they've drawn 8 cards this turn for the purpose of dredging. So that's half of their library here. Got Cabal Therapy over there. Targeting us. I think we're going to concede to that. Right, so we want these Leyline of the Voids in. These opposition agents can come out. Is that fine? Do we need anything else? Bowmasters can kill itself, which is good for removing bridges. Plague Engineer can sometimes do stuff here. Probably more so than Sheoldred's Edict. Although if they have like one of the big scary guys, we might want to remove that. No, I think we just run it like this. Or do we need Griefs? Maybe we don't need Griefs, we just have these Plague Engineers. We'll try that. It's nice to see a dredge deck just go fully off though. Even if it is right into my face. This doesn't have any Graveyard Hate, so we're going to mulligan this. This has 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate, so I'm going to keep this. And we're going to get rid of one of these Wastelands. Okay, done. Our opponent's probably mulliganing to an answer to Leyline the Void. We're going to play turn 0 Leyline, turn 2 Dauthi Voidwalker, and that should be enough to win this game. I might take a few turns, depending on what our opponent's up to. Let's see here. Cabal Therapy targeting us. Are they going to name Dauthi Voidwalker? They might do because of the Leyline here. They did name Dauthi Voidwalker. Yeah. Smart move. Let's just stop our opponent from being able to play the game. Because they usually run like 11 to 13 lands. So if we can keep them off of mana, they won't be able to actually answer our things. They're going to have answers to Leyline in there. You always board in the blind, you always board in answers to Leyline. There's no reason not to Thoughtseize here. Get some more information. So we can put one of these permanently into exile. I think what I'm more concerned with here. Careful Study can help them find more things. I think we're just going to take the Careful Study here. We will need to find a threat, but our threat base is the same as it was, pretty much. Should be able to find one soon. That is a threat. Do I want to... how many cards are going to have? They're going to have enough cards to Firestorm away our Sheoldred, but they have to do that into the Oblivion. They basically have to pitch all of their cards into the Void to kill our Sheoldred, which is a fine situation for me. Right, we didn't actually get there. We're going to name Jellyfish, I think. Not a thing you get to name with Plague Engineer that often. It's not necessarily going to be that good, but it means they don't get to leverage the maximum amount of bridges, perhaps. So there's our Urborg. It does give them black mana, but they already have black mana, but it means they don't actually lose a counter if they want black mana. So we're going to bash. They actually had 2 answers for Dauthi Voidwalker in terms of the Cabal Therapy they did hit it with and the Firestorm's follow-up, so opponent's quite well prepared. So if they want to kill this, they have to discard 5 cards, which is their whole hand. And then next turn, we Wasteland them. Alright, they're cycling the Street Wraith, which deals them 4, 2 for the Street Wraith, 2 for our Sheoldred, and they're scooping it up. Sure. So Dredge is one of the graveyard decks, probably one of the only graveyard decks, really, apart from Oops or Spells, that can't win the game without its graveyard. So, do you want to do anything differently here? I don't think so. I think we just run it back. Our opponent's victory was a lot more interesting than ours, to be honest. Because they've got to do lots of cool stuff. I do like Dredge. This hand has some graveyard hate, but it's very, very weak to Cabal Therapy. I think we do have to mulligan this. This has no black mana, but does keep them off of mana. Is that good enough? Sure, we'll try it. So we've got Chrome Moxes and a whole bunch of lands, and I'm quite content just to wasteland our opponent's first 2 lands. Are they going to have a Wispmare or something like that for this? We also have the Dark Rituals, so if they bounce it, we have the ability to replay the Leyline the Void. Yep, so there's our Swamp. We're not even interested in it yet. We're just going to wasteland our opponent's lands. I do like this black deck, actually. It's got a lot of the things I enjoy. Alright, so we're getting Nature's Claimed here. We've got Wastelands, we've got these cool little creatures I like. Just need some more card advantage. Alright, so our opponent can start doing their Dredge thing now. So we're going to pop their graveyard out because it's the very important zone here. Stern Dismissal. Orcish Bowmasters, is that what I'm interested in here? Do I want the Sheoldred? There's no bridges here, so we might just be able to put in the Plague Engineer here and immediately stop any guys coming in, like the Jellyfishes. Is that worth doing? Or do we hold out and just play the Sheoldred next turn, because that is the easier way of... No, I think we are just going to Dark Ritual out this Plague Engineer on Jellyfish. So they have to hit an Archimever and a Bridge from below to get any value. I'm pretty sure it's a Jellyfish. I'm starting to question myself now. Is it a Jellyfish? It's an illusion. Whoops. I'm so sure it was a Jellyfish. Whoopsie daisy. So we just completely wasted our turn there. They don't have a bridge, so we can just ping this down. Why do I think they were Jellyfish? I've played Dredge loads of times. I guess the creature type's just never been relevant for me. It does look like a Jellyfish. I can't really justify that. It was just an error. Right, so now they have a Cabal Therapy if they want it. They target themselves, put their Grave Troll into the graveyard. Yep, 2 Grave Trolls in. Is there any good things that we can take out of their graveyard here? No. Just play this land and go to tax. Yeah, so if we'd have named the correct thing with the Plague Engineer, they wouldn't have been able to do that and put the Grave Trolls into their bin. That was a pretty weak Dredge from them. We can find a land, that'd be nice. We did find a land. Okay, so now we can just assemble a pretty good win condition. So we have our opponent dead after this turn. What do they find here? 1 bridge. Nothing to come back. Yeah, that's game, unfortunately, for our opponent. Is there anything good we can take out of their graveyard here? Not really. Oh, I know what we can do, actually. We can get back Street Wraith here. And then play Urborg. That way we have an unblockable threat if they somehow manage to put a load of creatures into play. Because they're not drawing, they're dredging. So that doesn't actually impact them with the Sheoldred. But we have an unblockable 3-4. Alright, we got that game. It's a bit unfortunate for our opponent. They were pretty unlucky there. I think we should have been punished more for naming the wrong thing. We got kind of lucky that our opponent's dredges just didn't really materialise in a good fashion. They did board quite heavily, but I don't think that's necessarily their fault. But that is one of the weaknesses of dredge. It is very graveyard dependent, but also very variance affected, I would say. Alright, let's go to round 4. We are 2-1. On the play for round 4, we have Thoughtseize, into him to Tourach, and as many griefs as we can shake a stick at. I'll keep this one. If we need to grief as well, because our opponent's some sort of scary combo deck, we can do that. Okay, so we're on this deck that Bosch and Roll was playing the other day. So Scrap Trawler is definitely one of the things that needs to go here. This is a Crack Clan Ironworks deck. So we take this. I don't think we take the Ancient Stirrings. We want to take the things they find off of the Ancient Stirrings, because the thing we're most scared of is Crack Clan Ironworks. Because that's the card that lets them go off. Wasteland is obviously somewhat useful against their setup here. Ancient Stirrings. Love this card. So found a Scrap Trawler. The Mox Opal and the Lotus Petal. We're going to play Explosives for 0 to turn on their Mox Opal. They are not. Okay. Dark Ritual. So we can just power out a Grief here, which I'm going to do. Our opponent's deck is a bit weak to Bowmasters as well. So draw quite a lot of cards. Right, so we know they've got a Scrap Trawler. So we're going to take the Scrap Trawler and leave them with Ancient Tomb, Explosives, Ancient Tomb. Oh, I've just clicked off the Ancient Tomb, haven't I? So they've got an Ancient Tomb that isn't listed there. I think we'll take out the Stirrings here as well. We'll take the Stirrings. So they've got an Ancient Tomb and Explosives. And then next turn, if they've got 2 cards, we can take them both with the hand destruction we've got on display here. Mere Retriever. So when this dies, they can get back Scrap Trawler. That's pretty good. They might even put their Explosives on 2 here and blow up their own Retriever to get back their Scrap Trawler. Certainly an interesting play. Yeah, looks like they're going for it. I think that's probably what I would do in their situation. Castle Locthwain. So we have this Hymn to Tourach that doesn't do anything. They do have to blow up their Mere Retriever, which gives us a chance to then Hymn to Tourach away the cards from their hand if they can't deploy them in one turn. Saga, that's a very good card. Wouldn't mind finding a Wasteland now. Also, we have Graveyard Hate, which is very good against their deck too. This should be a good matchup for us, I would say. We've got Null Rods. We've got Graveyard Hate. We've got Hate for Draw Steps. We kind of got it all. Okay, I'm going to explode this. They lose their Mere Retriever. They're going to get themselves a Scrap Trawler. They're going to play it out right now to save it from getting poached from their hand. Makes sense. We need to find something useful this turn. Chrome Mox, are you something useful? I'm going to go with no on that one. Just going to keep hammering away our opponent with this Grief. They can deploy an Urza Saga to block with alongside a Scrap Trawler. So that's going to be slightly awkward. They didn't draw anything here though. So they attack the Scrap Trawler, they can't double block. If they double block, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 artifacts. So they're not double blocking. They're just going for the race here. They probably have Shadow Spear in there as an option. I'll play the Swamp out. Go to attacks. Play this Chrome Mox, imprint our Hymn to Tourach. This gives us Castle Locthwain. Do we have any 1-drops that we're interested in? Yes, we do. Something like a Reanimate might be useful here. A Dauthi Voidwalker. Alright, they're going to be very useful next turn. But how bad is it going to be for us in the meantime? If they do have a Shadow Spear, then we probably will lose these constructs unless we can find ourselves some Sheoldred's Edicts. Right, so there's another construct. What's coming out of the saga? I don't remember if they have the Shadow Spear. Not sure if Bosch and Roll was playing it when he recorded it. But we'll see. Pyrite Spellbomb. Sure. Ica Wellspring. Just draws them a card. They've got the red mana off the Mox Opal for the Pyrite Spellbomb, so we're not going to get our Grief to do very much. We're going to take 10 this turn though. And they don't have a way of sacrificing the Spellbomb. Of bringing back the Spellbomb for a second sacrifice. So we're not dead right now, but we can't hit them for damage with this card. A Swamp. If we draw any cards with Castle Locthwain, we will immediately lose the Pyrite Spellbomb. I think they just got us here. It's unfortunate, but our sideboard game here should be very good. We have 2 Null Rods, I'm very into here. We have 4 Leyline of the Voids. These are going to be useful. Opposition Agent I'm not massively in love with here. And I'm going to board out some Chrome Moxes, because they do kind of not make good friends with the Null Rod. But we do still need some amount of them. I don't think we can board out all of them. So I think this change is fine. Opposition Agent in this matchup doesn't stop Ancient Stirrings. So that's look at the top 5 cards not searching, but it does stop Urza's Saga. Our plan for Urza's Saga is to Wasteland it. I think that's just going to be better for us. So we're going to submit like this, try and make some early Dauthi Voidwalkers, and have a jolly good time with it. Yeah, we can keep this. We can turn 1, Dauthi Voidwalker, Dark Ritual, Dauthi Voidwalker, Thoughtseize, turn 2, him to Tourach our opponent. That should be pretty good. Dark Ritual. Play the Dauthi Voidwalker first, so that we get to put whatever's in here under the Void. Ancient Stirrings, Crack Clan Ironworks, Mishra's Research Desk. Interesting. I think I'll take the Scrap Trawler first. We're not going to use this Grief now. I'd rather have our him to Tourach hitting our opponent next turn. So we're going to see Besage You into Ancient Stirrings again. They're going to play the Lotus Petal first as well. Oh, they're going to play the Mishra's Research Desk. I preemptively clicked that Ancient Stirring. That's my bad. That's him to Tourach our opponent. So we got rid of the Ancient Stirrings, Chromatic Star, Scrap Trawler, Chromatic Star, Ancient Stirring. So they have a Crack Clan Ironworks in their hand. I'm just trying to work out if we want to try and grief that now or not. I think if we hold out for any black card, we're fine. We do get punished if they draw exactly Ancient Tomb here. Okay, seems unlikely they're going to be able to deploy it now. So if we can find any black card next turn, we can grief Reanimate. That'll be very strong. So our opponent's got 3 cards. Alright, so we're going to pitch this grief. We will take this Karn, I guess. And then we will reanimate this grief. Take their other Karn. And then we're going to sacrifice our Dauthi Voidwalker to play their Karn, which shuts off all of their artifacts. So they basically can't win from that point. Okay, don't want to change anything here. No, I think, like I said before, our deck's got so many tools in this matchup. It should be good, unless they just go off super early and somehow we don't interact with them. That's probably on us for keeping a bad hand in that case. All right, we're into game 3. All of the cards in our hand are good in this matchup. So we're going to keep this and deploy a Thoughtseize. I would love to draw a Dark Ritual. That would be great. Because then we get to do the Dauthi Voidwalker plan again, which shuts off their Scrap Trawler, Ancient Tomb, Mirror Retriever. Sure. We did not draw a Dark Ritual. We do get to Thoughtseize our opponent though. Dismember, Karn the Great Creator, Scrap Trawler. We don't really want them to cast Scrap Trawler this turn. I think we take out the Scrap Trawler. Now, there is an argument for taking out this Karn right now, while we can. That will cost us our Sheoldred though. We get punished if they play an Ancient Tomb here for not taking it. They didn't play an Ancient Tomb. I just want the maximum amount of knowledge about what I'm supposed to pitch this grief to do it. Another Dauthi Voidwalker, that's very nice. I think we do this. We're going to lose this Dauthi Voidwalker. That's why we're keeping the second one, because this card is just very good in the matchup. I think we're probably going to dismember the Dauthi Voidwalker response. Yep. It's a decent chunk of their life total gone. They have 2 Karn the Great Creators. Understood. Okay. We find a mana source. That's not great for us. Hopefully they find something they can't cast. Chromatic Star. We'll take 1 here. So now we get the Dauthi Voidwalker and it shuts off their Scrap Trawler plan and it gives us a way of pressuring a Karn when it comes down. Besage You. So now they can play this Karn. They might be inclined to uptick to keep it alive, but how much does that realistically help them further their game plan is the question. So here's the Karn. What are they going to get with it? Do they feel they can just get an artifact and that will be good enough? So they get something like the 1 ring. That would probably be quite good. Be a lovely time to draw Null Rod. Or they can plus it and keep themselves with a healthy Karn for next turn. So they can see what they're drawing and make a more informed decision about what they want to retrieve with the Karn. Because if they get something now, they also risk us drawing discard and hitting it that way. So I think the correct play here is to +1 it on nothing. Or they could +1 it on the Chromatic Star and attack for 2. Yeah, okay, that's what they've gone for here. I think that's the correct play. Our opponent got to it at a similar time that we worked out as well. A grief. So this will attack Karn, the Great Creator. Then we're just going to play this out as a threat. So we should be able to kill Karn next turn. What are they going to find off their Karn? They could get a ensnaring bridge here, which would be very good to sit behind. And not something that we interact with particularly favourably. Yep, there it is. So now we're looking for a Sheoldred. So we can beat this. Sheoldred does a very good job of doing that. Orcish Bowmasters can kill the Karn. Or we can draw a Chrome Mox. That's really helpful too. Okay, so we have a Dauthi Voidwalker with a Dismember under it. That's pretty much all we have access to right now. They can just uptick this Karn a little bit until they get there. So they're plussing on no targets here. Crack Clan Ironworks. Yep. So this gives them Mycosynth Lattice next turn. Oh, that's so good. Here comes a Null Rod. So now they do not have Mycosynth Lattice. We do need to find a Sheoldred to win this game though. Or Orcish Bowmasters can sort of help. You can get one ping in, and if they ever draw one card, at least we have some attackers then. Plussing Karn on nothing. Orcish Bowmasters. Alright, that might allow us to kill the Karn if they minus it. So let's hold off on that for a sec. Wizards Rockets. Sure, this comes in tapped and they can sack it for mana and draw a new extra card. Alrighty. We will play this Bowmasters out end of turn. We could try and catch one of their draw effects, but they can't use them while Null Rod's in play anyway. We just ping them for one. Shut off all their extra card draw. Great time to draw Sheoldred the Apocalypse. We did not draw Sheoldred the Apocalypse. We do not want to play the Urborg either, so it's going to pass the turn. We want our opponent's Ancient Tomb to hurt them if they ever have to tap it. That's why we're not playing the Urborg. Expose this for 0. This is just to keep their hand empty so they don't die into the bridge. Yeah, so the bridge is going to be a long time before we get to attack through it at this rate. Now if our opponent draws some 4-drops, they can't cast those. And Scrap Trawler will cost them life. We need our opponent to draw high CMC cards. They either have to play or... Alright, a Wasteland. This is pretty good for us. Can play this. We can... I think we want to hit the green source. This stops our opponent from digging for anything with Ancient Stirrings. Now they can still cast spells with Ancient Tomb, but they will cost them life. So if they draw only 1-drops, they have to decide whether they want to cast them with Ancient Tomb. Alright, they just drew another Ancient Tomb. Alright. Awkward. Sure, just keep plussing your Karn. Yes, we drew the Sheoldred finally. That should be the game, I think. I've got 4 turns to deal with this. And Ancient Tombs take a turn off that clock whenever they tap them. It will cost them 6 life to kill it with a Dismember as well. So it's going to be tough. Our deck feels very well kitted out to beat this sort of deck. Especially post-board, we have the Null Rods as well as all of our lovely tools. So we're also being rewarded for not playing this Urborg, because our opponent would be able to cast 2-drops now, or 1-drops even. So they could have cast a Dismember here, for example, if I'd have played that Urborg without dying to kill our Sheoldred. Alright, our opponent had a little think for a while and decided that they couldn't beat what we had, which is understandable. We had just non-stop good cards in this matchup. Like, our whole deck is just good in this matchup, really. So we're on the play for the final round. We have Thoughtseize into Opposition Agent. I will take that. I'll keep this. We'll play our Hive the Eye Tyrant second, I think. I don't like having the double Chrome Mox here, but we're not trying to Chrome Mox on turn 1. I think we're just going to get our Thoughtseize out there, and then we can see how we feel about what we want to put under the Chrome Mox. Never feels bad to be Thoughtseizing your opponent on turn 1. Orcish Bowmasters, Recruiter of the Guard, Stoneforge, Mystic. Which of these is most irritating to me? Probably the Stoneforge. Like, the Recruiter is kind of annoying as well. I think we'll take the Stoneforge though. The Recruiter's is a long way off. Now I know we do have the Opposition Agent that we could do some stuff with here. But if our opponent draws like a Swords to Plowshares or something, I don't know. Maybe we're supposed to let them have that. It just doesn't feel right. It feels like you should always take a card that can beat you there. Let's play Hive the Eye Tyrant. Let's play this Chrome Mox. Gonna crack your fetch land and response opponent. You're not. Alright, I'm gonna do this and we're gonna steal our opponent's land. They're gonna be sad about it. Snow covered plains. Thoughtseize. It's quite a nice draw actually. Thoughtseize our opponent here. They crack their fetch land in response. We Opposition Agent in response. Okay. So we have these 2 Orcish Bowmasters. We'll take one of these. We've got 5 cards now. 1, 2, 3. They're going to cast Bowmasters at end step. They're not. They're going to play around our opposition agent. They have a choice now. They can play into us with a Recruiter of the Guard, which would be very tasty for us. No, we just pass here. We've got their cards checked quite nicely here. They can't get black mana. They can't Recruiter of the Guard. We can find another mana source. We can deploy Dauthi Voidwalker and keep up our opposition agent. There's the Marshlands that we knew about. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, sure. Very much like to find a land here. That is a land. Deploy Dauthi Voidwalker. They know that we didn't draw a land last turn. So they knew we drew the land this turn, which meant we had the Dauthi Voidwalker in hand. So they are pretty certain that we have opposition agent. They're certainly playing like we have opposition agent. And cracking this. We'll get some value with our opposition agent. They've got a removal spell here. They do. Solitude, pitching the Recruiter of the Guard. That's fine by me. I'm taking our opposition agent out. Sure. So we now have a Solitude underneath our Dauthi Voidwalker if we ever need to kill a creature. But we just have to be careful with things like Flicker Wisp if we do that, because it comes back under its owner's control. So they bash for 2 because we can't block and they can't block because of Shadow. We know they've got this Bowmaster hanging around. So this has Menace. So they can triple block. So I can trade this land for our opponent's Bowmasters. Interesting. Is that worth doing? Do we just hold up Dauthi Voidwalker, then attack with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant? Because then our opponent can't really get much joy there. Would I trade my Hive of the Eye Tyrant for their Orcish Bowmasters? We're kind of fine against Orcish Bowmasters. I think we're going to animate our Hive of the Eye Tyrant. A little land I put in at the last minute in the deck tech. Let's see if it can do something here. So this has Menace. They have to block with both things. So if we attack with just the Hive of the Eye Tyrant here, then we can hold up the Solitude if we want to. We get to exile a card from our opponent's graveyard. We're not going to want to reanimate their Stainvoid Mystic, so I'm just going to take this. So they see the line that we have available to us with the Dauthi Voidwalker. We've got the Solitude whenever we require it. I imagine we're going to see a Bowmasters and ping us for 1 here. Yep, there it is. Depending on how our opponent manages their next turn, we might be putting in a Solitude instead of our Dauthi Voidwalker, but we'll see. Just 2 from that. Now we can attack with both of these. Unless our opponent has another Bowmasters, we should be fine. Spirit of the Labyrinth, we don't care about that, sure. Although it's a reasonable clock. Sheoldred the Apocalypse. Not great into Caracas, as it turns out. They've got a second Caracas in hand, which is also annoying. So I think we just fire up the Hive. We attack for 6, they attack back for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But we have removal coming down the line. So I want to block this. They have to lose 2 creatures. Spirit of the Labyrinth plus 1 other creature. So blocked with like Thalia and Spirit of the Labyrinth, if the Thalia was untapped, they could then bounce their Thalia and just trade the Spirit for the Hive. Alright, so they're putting 2 creatures under the bus here. Alright, that's fine by me. We kill their guys. We bash them for a little bit of damage. So they're coming in for 3. We're coming in for 3. We do have removal in hand. Our opponent just had a Caracas. So I like the spot we're in here. Richardam Port. It's kind of annoying, but not the end of the world for us. Sure, we can take a little bit of damage here. I suspect we're getting ported in our upkeep. What do they take out here? The Wasteland? One of our swamps. This costs 3 anyway, so Wasteland. I like the Wasteland here. So I think this turn we are casting this. This gives us a Bowmasters if we want it as well. And we can play Sheoldred and Wasteland the Caracas as well. Another Richardam Port. It's not really going to help them. I guess it takes us off of these 2 black sources this turn, which is annoying, but otherwise fine. We have Wastelands that we can pitch at these in our opponent's turn if we feel the need. Grief. How good is Grief here? We're going to attacks. I don't really want to pitch cast this Grief. So we're probably going to mess with our opponent's Richardam Ports in the very near future. Because if we can get this Grief into play, that's a 2-turn clock. That becomes a 1-turn clock. So that's quite a big upgrade for us. Just get rid of a port. Get rid of this other port. I don't think they're trying to Wasteland their Caracas plan is the way forward at this point. Grief. Opponent's got 2 cards in hand. If they have a Solitude here, that's pretty bad for us. Does that mean we're supposed to pitch cast one of these Griefs? I don't think so. And play one of these Chrome Moxes. And printing the Grief. So we could pitch cast this Grief, or we can cast it next turn. If they have a Solitude, we gain 3 life anyway, so it's not the end of the world for us. Bowmasters, that's the same amount of damage, that's 5 coming for us. And they're still dead on the next turn. Alright, we got the game. Bit of a grindy one, but we got there. Sideboarding. Mono white, you say. They showed us lots of things that died to Plague Engineer. And him to Tourach is going to be good here. Torpor Orb, also pretty good. Torpor Orb, not great with the Grief, though. Or the Bowmasters at the end of the day. But I think the Grief is probably the weakest of the cards there. Opposition Agent feels quite nice here. Sheoldred's not great until their Caracases. I think we can probably trim that at the very least. Reanimate is okay as well here. But we don't really want to draw multiples of them, so I think we trim that. Just doing 2 more cuts if we want to keep these Torpor Orbs in. Dauthi Voidwalker is pretty middling here, isn't it, really? It is a creature that attacks, though. Which doesn't sound like much, but is quite a big deal. Maybe just boarding out the Sheoldreds entirely. Let's take out Thoughtseize. Like, Thoughtseize are okay, but you don't want to draw them in top deck wars later on. Him is just a really nice 2-for-1, so I'm always happy to have that in a grindy matchup. This shuts off some of our opponent's deck. But then what is the question? It stops a lot of our opponent's deck. And we have a removal spell and a piece of mana disruption. I think this is keepable. It's not really how I want to play the game. I would like to have some, you know, threats in there. Our opponent's mulligan to 5 though, so we can stop Stoneforge as early as turn 1 if we want to. But if they play the Stoneforge, we can always Sheoldred's Edict it anyway. That's what our opponent's got going over there. Basic Marsh Flats, just a good old friendly Marsh Flats. Not actually a basic type, just plain and simple. Mother of Runes. Okay. We'll play a basic Swamp. I don't think we need to... I want to get the Torpor Orb down, and then we can start Wastelanding and Sheoldred's Edict our opponents. Our opponent is a 60 card D&T build as well. Thalia, sure. So we're not going to be casting the Torpor Orb this turn. Understood. Unless we draw a Dire Ritual, I guess. Right, we just have to keep playing out these swamps, sadly. Rishtan Port is going to be very useful against us right now. We can just cast this Plague Engineer on our turn, which will kill both of their creatures. Well, they'll bounce their Thalia. But if we draw... Right, we're just going to play a Swamp out, play a Plague Engineer on human, kill their guys. So they're going to bounce their Thalia in response, so that if they can remove this, they can redeploy their Thalia at a later date. Oh, they didn't bounce their Thalia. That's an error. Unless they've got a 2-drop they want to deploy right now, or 3-drop. If they think what they've got in their hand is going to be better than just having the Thalia in hand. So they have to have something for this mana, otherwise I think that's just an error. A plow. Sure. Okay, that was definitely an error. They could have bounced their Thalia and then... Okay. Bowmasters. They think Bowmasters is that good against us? I don't even think it's very good against... We don't draw any extra cards. We don't have any X1s in our deck, apart from Bowmasters, which usually gets its value straight away anyway. So we're going to need to find a creature at some point, but I'm pretty happy with the spot we're in. Okay, so we can play a Torpor Orb. It does mean the next card we draw is going to be Orcish Bowmasters, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So we've got a Sheoldred's Edict if we want it, but we shut off Recruiters, Skyclave Apparitions, Stoneforges, a whole bunch of their deck. Alright, a Rishtan Port, we do have a Wasteland for that. So they valued this Orcish Bowmasters over having a Thalia, which I think is wrong. Like, they could have had both just on a slightly longer time frame, and this matchup is usually going to be a grind. I don't think I need to Edict just yet. Tourach. This guy is when he enters the battlefield, so it won't do anything with the Torpor Orb. So there's no point casting it with Kicker. We'll just play the guy out though. He does get Caracas, but we'll see if our opponent's aware of that. Another port. Very rude. Right, we're going to block the Bowmasters here, because this guy just gets bounced by the Caracas, and we're probably going to need the Wasteland to hit their ports. This also means this hits whatever non-token creature we want. We're going to tap down one of our swamps. We'll float a mana. They should do this on our draw step instead, because now we're going to... Are we going to... I don't think it's worth Sheoldred's Edict in that, to be honest. It's only a 1-1. I'd rather save it for like a big scary creature. Okay, so we can play out our Dauthi Voidwalker, play our Wasteland, take our opponent off of black mana here. I think that's more important than getting the ports out of the way here. So our opponent's got us on a 14 turn clock, and we've got them on a 7 turn clock. Leonin War Leader. Whenever it attacks, create 2 cats. Okay, not seen this for a long time. We are going to Edict this, because this is actually quite a good creature. A good time to draw like a 3-drop or something that can go along with our Sheoldred's Edict here. It could just be Sheoldred's Edict, Castle Locthwaining. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. It's Castle Locthwain. We can play their Leonin War Leader if we want. By the way, he was supposed to be the Leonin that doesn't make people search. Having a nice chat with our opponent. Once again, you love to see the legacy people. They're always friendly people. Okay. Mother of Runes. Get bashed for 1. Like I said, our clock is superior and we have removal in hand right now. We can play out this Chrome Mox with nothing underneath it. Just to get cards out of our hand. Let's draw a card. A Boys. Not great underneath our own Torpor Orb. Especially since the way our opponent deals with the Torpor Orb is with come into play creatures. So, but this is something that we can flash in when our opponent's tapping our stuff down, if that's what they're up to. Sure, we can take 2 here. They're going to port us. We'll tap this for 1. We're not going to draw a card with it now, I don't think. Yeah, so basically just save that to be mana efficient. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. It's probably a Caracas, isn't it? Cauldron complete. Alright, I'm glad our opponent's not casting that. Splash for 3. So our opponent's got us on a 4 turn clock. But after this they'll be on 10. So we got 4, so we've got a 3 turn clock. So we're 1 turn ahead. We have an emergency edict if we need it. I think we will just fire this off on the Mother of Runes. Or actually no, if we draw a Plague Engineer, we're not going to want to do that. Alright, they're just scooping it up. They've had enough. So we got a pretty comfortable 4-1, I would say, with that one. Really happy with that. Let's have a look about the deck. So, like I said at the top, we have loads of cards that are win conditions on their own. You know, they do damage, like Dauthi Voidwalker, Opposition Agent, Bowmasters, Sheoldred. They do win the game on their own eventually, right? They are creatures, they do get to attack. But the prison element they bring to the game is so strong that, you know, we found ways of shutting our opponents down. And we kind of leaned into that more with some of our sideboard choices, like Torpor Orb, Null Rod, Cursed Totem, Plague Engineer, Leyline in the Void. You know, we basically are an aggro prison deck in black. But instead of trying to accelerate a bunch of stuff out with all these soul lands and things, we've just got a really stable mana base that we can just always reliably cast our spells, which is something I hate playing mono black, which is why I really don't like the Karn builds. Because Karn is often underwhelming. It's either bad or the thing that wins you the game. And there's nothing in between. And so often it's the weaker end of that scale. So I like having the mono black mana base. I also saw a deck while I was sort of tweaking this for the league after I got sort of submitted their donation. I only made a few changes. It's very close to what the donor submitted. I think the only difference really is that I squeezed in the 4 Bowmasters. Everything else was exactly as they wanted it. I think I just tweaked a few numbers here and there to get that going. When I added the Castle Locthwain, Hive the Eye Tyrant and Urborg over Ancient Tombs. But this is pretty much what the donor submitted. A few sideboard things too. But anyway, so like I was saying, while I was like having a little think about this, I was looking up some other decks and I saw a deck from another event that was a mono black deck with no soul lands. And again, you know, it had Dark Rituals and stuff, but it was even running Nighthawk Scavenger, which is pretty cool. So I might have a look at that at some point. I think mono black is very good at the moment, to be honest. It has tools to deal with lots of things, right? We have redundant effects that mess with people who want to draw multiple cards. We have loads of graveyard hate in the form of Dauthi Voidwalker and Leyline in the Void. And we don't need to play Leyline in the main deck. There's less graveyard decks around than there were, or decks that were dependent on the graveyard than there were when the mono black Dauthi Helm deck was at its sort of peak. That was sort of just before Eldrazi Winter, I think, was when that deck was... Sorry, not Eldrazi Winter, Initiative Winter. Sorry. It's always the winter where something breaks a format, right? Anyway, the Dauthi Voidwalker is just a good card on its own, whereas Leyline is situational. So just having the Dauthi Voidwalker's main feels a lot better than trying to jam in these Leylines and do Helm stuff. So I'm pretty happy with a lot of the creatures we have here. The person who submitted the donation did say that they were interested in if I could squeeze in any Dark Confidant in the deck. And that was one thing I couldn't squeeze in because it just feels like a little bit of a liability. On the one hand, it doesn't actually draw you extra cards. It puts extra cards into your hand, so it dodges things like Bowmasters. But on the other hand, it's an X1, so it dies to Bowmasters. So our deck is actually pretty good against Bowmasters. The only thing that it kills on our side of the board is Bowmasters. And you saw many times we didn't really care if our opponent played the Bowmasters. It was like, okay, you know, it's 2 1/1s. We should be able to deal with this, and we usually did. So I think this deck is pretty good, and I'd like to mess around with some more mono blacks, sort of try different angles. I've got some ideas of doing some Obosh and some Gyruda builds and sort of seeing the over-under on them. I also quite like Tribal, but I think because all the best creatures here, like this and the Dauthi Voidwalker and the Opposition Agent are rogues, but then Bowmasters is an archer, Sheoldred is a Phyrexian Praetor, something rather, Grief is an elemental, etc, etc. So you're not going to get that much joy out of your Cavern of Souls. They don't help you cast things like Hymn to Tourach, which is a really powerful card. So I don't think a tribal build like this works. I think a tribal build has to be something completely different. But I do enjoy mono black. Like maybe mono black vampires is something that I'll play at some point, but it's going to look very different to this, which I think is more towards where you want to be with a mono black deck. Just have a bunch of solidly good cards that have really big impacts on the game, and just sort of haymaker them out with these sorts of things. Just restrict your opponent's ability to play. And I did love having the Wastelands in a deck like this. I love Wastelands a lot. It's one of my all-time favourite cards. You might have guessed if you watch my channel enough. I love Wasteland and people. But I think in this sort of shell, it makes a lot of sense. What I will say is 4 mana feels like quite a bit here. And I don't really like pitching cards to the Grief unless we've got like the Reanimate. Now, sometimes we did have spare stuff. But having 7 pitch spells between our 4 Griefs and our 3 Chrome Moxes is quite a lot. So maybe I think about tweaking with that. I do think the Reanimate is fine. I think having 3 Reanimates instead of 4 makes sense. We could always go into run some of the Trolls. If you want to do more Reanimate type stuff, you can run the Troll that the Death Shadow player we played against had. But yeah, this deck felt really solid. We did kind of step on ourselves a little bit with the Torpor Orb game, and it didn't really come up that Torpor Orb was good in that matchup. In that game, it is good in the matchup, but our opponent's hand and the way they drew it out didn't really show that. But again, they have Skyclave Apparitions, they've got Flicker Wisps, they've got Stoneforge Mystics, Bow Boys, a whole bunch of stuff that we don't want to be doing this thing. Solitude is another one. It does mean they can pitch cast a Solitude and just get a Solitude, but they don't get to kill our guy with it, which I think is really important too. So I do think that Torpor Orb is worth bringing in, even if it does make your Bowmasters kind of weaker and your Tourach look a little bit foolish at times. But you can still play Tourach and then Hymn to Tourach and put some counters on it. It's just you don't get the initial sort of kicked ability when it comes into play. What would I change in this deck going forward? Maybe we could fit in another utility land. I know people like Takenuma. I've never really been very impressed with that as a card. There might be something else you can play. Might be worth tinkering with potential like troll lines. Maybe that's more enjoyable to me than the Chrome Moxes. And that kind of gives you another black card to pitch to Grief. And also something good to reanimate on your own. So maybe like 2 trolls, 1 more reanimate. And then you've got sort of 6 things that will go with your reanimate on your own, with excluding what your opponent's doing. So maybe that's a way you could take this if you wanted to go sort of deeper into the scam build. But I think what we've got here is a really solid deck that you can play and have a good time with. Now, we are at the mercy of the top of our deck. So the one round we lost was when we were playing against the Grixis Delver deck, which I think is one of the best decks in the format, if not the best deck. And the basic difference in that matchup was our opponent had card filtering. They also had card advantage because they had the, what's it called? Night's Whisper, that's the one. So we didn't have sort of that little extra bit to get the few more cards that we needed to win. So we were kind of at the mercy of the top of our deck. And if we'd have drawn a bit better, then I think we would have crushed that. But we didn't, so we sort of got beaten by a pretty narrow margin. So I think it's kind of an issue to look at with this deck. And how to fix that is hard. Like, we don't really have the filtering. You can't play Sensei's Divine Top because that was banned a very long time ago. I don't think we want to play any sort of Scroll Recce type stuff. Now, you could play Dark Confident and just say, well, sometimes it'll get hit by Bowmasters, sometimes it won't. But we are playing a lot of 4-drops to do that. You could play something like Phyrexian Arena. That does get stood on a little bit by Bowmasters in an awkward way that I'm not a fan of. You could play the one that I really like is Black Market Connections. I love that card, but I do kill myself with it all the time. But I think that helps you with getting more mana if you're trying to get up to these 4-drops. And if they've got a Bowmasters in play, you don't have to draw a card with it. You can just get treasure or make a 3-2. So there is that option. But I've had very mixed results with Black Market Connections. It feels quite strong, but the downside is very real. And the fact that I've lost to it a few times is definitely an issue. So I'm not sure where we go with the card advantage in this deck if we want to try and fix that. Or do we just say maybe 1 or 2 more utility lands so that if we're flooding out a little bit, we're doing it better. But, you know, we do have some cards, basically this column of Dark Rituals, Thoughtseize, Reanimate, Chrome Moxes, Hymn to Tourach. Like, these kind of things aren't really impacting the board when you sort of draw them in the mid to late game. Like, sometimes Reanimate will. You know, sometimes the other bits will. But generally speaking, if you're trying to take over the board, you need something else. If we had a way of like filtering cards, that would help. But I honestly don't know quite what the thing is. If you've got any ideas of what could improve this, I'd like to hear it. What sort of card advantage? Also trying to fit it in, right? So I think the Chrome Mox is the mana source. Now, obviously, the Swamp Cycling guy is a slower mana source, right? Because it's not ramping you out a turn. But we've got Thoughtseize still. And we've got Dark Rituals. And we've got Grief Reanimate. So maybe if we go up to 4 Reanimate, that gives us quite a lot of... That's like 12 potential turn 1 plays there. Which is fine, you know. But it means our turn 2 plays... We've got quite a lot of turn 2 plays. You've got Bowboys, Dauthi Voidwalker, and Hymn to Tourach. So that's 10 that are non-situational that we're just happy to play. So maybe that will help the curve a little bit and give us, like I said, give us more black cards. And late game, drawing a troll is much better than drawing a Chrome Mox. And it means we won't step on our own toes with the Null Rod out of the sideboard sometimes. So that's something to think about. I've been very impressed seeing the troll decks. Now, reanimating that guy is a real cost because he does cost a lot. He's a 6-drop. So, you know, you're taking a big hit in the face to make that guy. And we're not playing Death Shadow to leverage our low life total. But nevertheless, I think it is a very powerful thing to do if you can stick that. So it's something to think about. I do like the cycling type things. Anyway, I think I've talked about this one quite enough. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's sort of a different take on Mono Black that I think is preferable to all these Karn things, to be honest. And yes, Karn is good against the One Ring deck, but so is Null Rod, and it costs half the price in terms of mana, so you're more likely to actually get to cast it, and we can cast all of our spells. We never had trouble casting our spells in this league, whereas if you watch other videos where I play Mono Black, I've had problems casting my spells. Or if you watch any of Phil's league over on Traben U, he quite often plays Mono Black there, and he quite often struggles to cast his spells when he's playing like decks of a bunch of Ancient Tombs that people have sort of donated to him to play. So I definitely think that's a real bonus for this deck. And the curve is pretty reasonable too. Alright, I think we're done. So if you would like a donation deck on my channel, you can do that. Why not message me via the Discord in the description below, or you can just leave a comment in the video and I'll give you an address to message me if that's something you're interested in. I have pretty reasonable prices for my donation decks, so why not get involved? Although if you don't want to do that, just like and subscribe, comments, share with your friends. Anything like that really helps the channel out. And just keep watching. You know, Legacy is such a great format, and I think we should all enjoy it as much as we can. Thank you very much for watching then, and goodbye.